And if I'm going to miss, I want to miss on the slow side, right? I don't want to overdo it. And then in the afternoon, I'll come back and be closer to that 5:05, 5:10 range.
Welcome to the Marathon Podcast. My name is Kristian Everdell Warwick. Warwick runs on Instagram, YouTube. Really happy to have you here for episode number 182 of the Marathon Podcast. On today's episode, we're having Ryan Smith with us, and he kind of surprised himself and I think a lot of other people by running a 2:15 in his debut up in Vermont a few weeks ago. I was tipped about him by someone, and they said that you really need to have this guy on. And I'm so happy that I was told about him because, man, did I have a good conversation with him today. He had such good and valuable insight into his training, his career. I was really impressed with the way he's looking at training, his way of, or his approach, I guess, to running, to training, but also to competing, and just the way you can be ambitious, but still uh, just have fun and focus on the process. On today's or in during this conversation, we ended up talking about quite a lot, but it was interesting to hear about how he got back from a stress fracture. It was interesting to hear how he is balancing intensity. There were some things he touched on when it comes to intensity that I really, really liked. And I think that a lot of people, myself included, we can learn from that, like leaning more to the slower side than rather than the higher side of intensity when we are having workouts. And I guess that's the same for easier runs. I don't have that much to report on in terms of my own training because I'm recording this almost just after I released the episode from on Wednesday. So I think we'll just jump straight to the conversation with Ryan and enjoy. Ryan, welcome to the Marathon Podcast.
Hey, Christian, how you doing? Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
G- Thank you for coming on. We've already talked soccer and the World Cup before recording, so we got that over with, and then we can focus on the running. So that'll be fun too.
Yeah, we got the fun stuff out of the way. Now it's down to brass tacks, as they say.
Exactly, exactly. Why don't you like? I feel like you're a fast marathoner, 2:15 debut, but I don't think that a lot of people know who you are. Can you please just establish who you are? If you want to just present yourself, like, yeah, where you're from, age, and your running background.
Yeah. So, hi everybody listening. I'm Ryan. I just turned 25, so I'm 3 years out from college. And I would say that at least in terms of running in America, I'm a very standard story. I switched over. I played other sports and then switched over. Later on in high school, found that I might get pretty good at running. This is something that I should maybe think about doing in college. So ended up running Division 3 in college. So, for those who don't know, in America, the NCAA is kind of the college system. There's Division 1, 2, and 3. So Division 3 is, while maybe not as blue chip as Division 1, there's a lot of really talented athletes and really hardworking athletes because it doesn't have some of the same scholarship opportunities. You tend to be doing it because you love it. And I was pretty good in college. Definitely, I was never all American. I wasn't making headlines or anything, but I was, solid, improving year to year. And I just really fell in love with training. Like racing is obviously the end goal, but I really enjoyed the training and I wanted to continue doing that afterwards. So each year I made improvements, whether it was running more miles or doing some harder or better workouts. Each year I was just slowly chipping away, and I've always kind of chased the breakthrough. And I was actually starting to reach a point where I was questioning whether the breakthrough would happen just because I've ran for a few years and I've made steady progress, but I always thought of myself as being capable of so much more. And then I guess it turns out that, choosing a new event and maybe a new stimulus, I got a really positive response and it culminated in this awesome marathon debut, 2:15:52. And for us Americans, that's a pretty big barrier because 2 hours, 16 minutes flat is the standard to go to our Olympic trials. I think we're the only country in the world where we run a race to choose our Olympic team. So, uh, while making the team is not necessarily the goal, I'll be on the starting line with 100 to 200 other Americans. So, yeah, that's the short version. Happy to get into what led to these races and what kept me going and whatnot. But that's my story. Very relatable, I'd say. There's a lot of folks out there like that.
Yeah, I love it when you share this. Obviously, like you said, you were a runner at a pretty decent level, but I think personally, it's really cool to hear people showing up, and like it sounds like you've been showing up day in and day out for years training, but like then you get this breakthrough that you've been waiting for. Before we dive into to more of like what your running has been like, can you just share a little bit about what it felt like when you crossed that finish line and you ran an OTQ in your first ever marathon?
Yeah, just given my goals for the day and my expectations for myself that I had set in the days, weeks leading up, I was pretty shocked. That just wasn't really what I was trying to do. I was there to put a time on the board for a later race, a faster, more competitive race. And also for the listener, I I I think second place was a couple minutes behind, right? I was running alone this whole time. So it wasn't the sort of thing where I was coming in 25th place and I just was surprised I ran that fast. I mean, I was totally alone and the goal was just to run it. So I was feeling really surprised. I obviously there were breadcrumbs along the way. Like I knew I was hitting a pretty good pace early on and when I came through halfway, I had an idea of where I was at, but I just I really just felt like I was missing something. Like I felt like I had done the math wrong or something. Just nothing was guaranteed. I knew I didn't know anything. So when I finally came through the last 50 meters, there's a video online. It's a grass stretch to the finish. And that's the first time you see the clock or like anything official. So up
Hmm.
to that point, I'm just looking at my watch. This is kind of in terms of marathons, this is kind of a smaller, lower key race. So they had mile markers throughout the course, but no clock. Um, and so yeah, I mean, I was just overwhelmed. I was trying to understand like what this means because this was supposed to be like every spring and every fall for the next few years. The goal was let's run a marathon to try and run that time.
Yeah.
And it's ironic because the only race where that wasn't really the goal was this one. So yeah, just trying to process like wow, what does this mean? Like what am I gonna do next? So I guess that's
Wow.
what I was feeling.
It's I think that you said that your background might be relatable. I doubt that that this one is very relatable to be like, okay, I'm gonna like line up and then I'm running a 2:15 and winning the race. My first ever marathons. It's pretty unique. What has the like what has it been like to be you? Like how has the world of running reacted to this?
Um So the world or like the internet reacted to it. It just got a lot of like views online. It got like 5, 6 million views on Instagram, which is very random and it's not related to running. Most people in the comments clearly don't run, just based on their questions and
Yeah.
their thoughts. But in terms of like running, for me, it's opened a lot of doors. I live in Boston. It's a very running heavy city. Uh, but when you're just a honestly, until you have that breakthrough race, I think that you're still kind of viewed through the lens of who you were in college. So what I mean by that is I ran Division 3. I was okay, not great. I think like people knew who I was and I could like meet some people for runs, but being a part of a group or kind of gaining respect for myself, I found it a little bit harder. I didn't have many people outside my social circle to run with, right? Um and then now, I've been put in contact with some incredible people. And it's not like they should have known me then and it's this chip on my shoulder thing. It's more so, all of a sudden, I've a lot of people know who I am now. And that's very cool. And then also I've been able to make some relationships and have some conversations with, there are a few shoe companies based here, right? And I need a lot of
Hmm.
shoes to train in, and they're more than willing to send them to me now that I've ran 2:15 and the internet has caught on, right? If I had cold emailed them, 3 months ago, it would have gone to spam. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, it does really change my relationship with running, not my interest in it, but more so from like a literal like relationship standpoint. Like the people I know, the people that know me has changed.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I can imagine like running a 215, and I think, or I've had a couple of conversations with other people on this podcast as well, because to me 215 is just such an elite time. And now obviously you have a lot of people running fairly fast times, but we don't have to go that far back in time for 215 being enough to be like a professional runner, right? Like so
Right.
it's kind of crazy when you think about where you are at right now after your first one. And it does make me curious because you were saying that uh, you kind of you always loved the part of running that was just training and like not
Yeah.
necessarily, or I don't know, it sounds like you liked competing as well. I don't know, did you have more of a love for just the activity itself than you had for the competition, or do you feel like you were able to balance that?
Yeah. I think if there's a couple different ways to love this sport, which I think is what's beautiful about it. Like some people just want to go for 4 or 5 miles just once a day, or maybe not even once a day, maybe just a couple times a week. And there's no intensity with it. And it's more of just a fun thing. I want to, instead of, trying to hit a certain zone or pace, I just want to like enjoy a certain view. I wanna go on a certain trail. I think that that's a really normal way to interact with it. And then there's, I'm not saying I'm on the end of the spectrum, but I really enjoy the data of mileage and fitness and, workout paces. I just really enjoy that. It splits up the week, meaning, Tuesday is a workout day, which affects how I behave on Monday. It affects what I eat, how I sleep, and then obviously Tuesday, very important. Similarly, like, it provides a week to week challenge of sorts, and I am somebody that has always enjoyed challenges. So that's how I like to, interact with it, and yeah, it hasn't really changed in that regard. Competitions are still fun, and they're what the training is for, but competitions can be stressful, and sometimes they don't go well. Now, competitions that don't go well might make a moment like last month even sweeter, right? Like, it makes the good races that much better, and you could argue that maybe that's really what they're for, but, if you, gave me the option, like, you can train, you don't have to work, you'll just train, but you never get to race again, I would take it in a heartbeat because I don't need to race necessarily. I could be happy just training and enjoying that, but then on sometimes you train a lot, and it's like you convince yourself you're in a certain shape, um, which is like you're not actually in that shape until you race it. So,
Yeah.
that's a long-winded way of saying I do enjoy training, but I think racing has a place for me.
Yeah, because I was actually going to ask you that. What you gonna frame the question yourself? Of like, if someone took racing away from you, if you would still enjoy running just as much. Do you feel like, or what is it about? Because what you are kind of describing, I would say, is this 24/7 athlete, right? Where you are making very dedicated decisions or choices throughout the week based on running for you to, if not perform even on race, they just kind of perform for that workout or whatever it is. Would you say that, or what is it about that like lifestyle or those workouts that trigger something or triggers something in you if it wasn't for races?
Yeah, if you totally remove, like, the racing component, it would probably become monotonous, which is the exact reason I enjoy training is because it breaks up the monotony, but if you remove racing, it might become repetitive and, like, what's the point? So it's a great question. I think racing, that's what the point is, like, racing is what provides the the the, gold at the end of the rainbow, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, if you take it out, I like to think I would enjoy it just as I do now, but it would probably be very different. So I think I would need something to
Mhm.
like some sort of litmus test just to demonstrate it's working, it's worthwhile, etc.
But you're, so you're living, like you say, said you live in Boston, where you have the biggest, or I would say, like, I'm biased, like, but the biggest, best marathon in the world,
Yeah.
and there you obviously have like a big crowd and all of it. Does that mean that, like, for you, it doesn't need to be that big of an event? It could easily be just like your local marathon with no spectators, nothing, and then you would just enjoy that just as much? Or do you think that you're also drawn to those bigger races? So now that you qualified for the time trials, like, n- would the Olympics be kind of your pinnacle and it would be a great thing to do because it's a great big race? Or yeah, where are you at if the competitions aren't necessarily the main uh, motivation for you, I guess?
I think I like I can enjoy both types of races. I do enjoy the smaller ones. I like running at the front of races. It just gives me a little bit of extra like adrenaline, and I do enjoy just leading. I've always been somebody that enjoys being towards the front of a group. Um, and then I also really want to experience the big races. I had a great opportunity the last race before my marathon. I ran a road 5K uh, the weekend of the weekend of the Boston Marathon.
Hmm.
So that was, I was in the professional field for that, and there are, guys from Ethiopia, Kenya, America, Britain, Germany, like they flew in for this 5K, and obviously I'm
Yeah.
not on their level. They ran 13:20. I mean, it was a crazy
Hmm.
fast race. But I was in the tent with them beforehand and, got to do some strides and really kind of pretend like I was an elite level Olympic athlete. And that was really fun, and I it gave me, like, a glimpse into, "Oh, so these marathon majors down the road I wanna run, this is what it might feel like." And it was a great opportunity. Um, I I don't I haven't really done many really big races, and not because I've avoided them, but just because, Boston, you need to have already ran a marathon, I believe.
Yeah.
This was
Yeah.
my first. So I haven't been able to run that one. They're a little bit hard to find, and, um to a little bit of a fall. Like I tried to find a race that really suited me in terms of like this is a good opportunity to run fast, and those have because I have not been at this level my whole life. I haven't been those races have not been ideal for me to maybe enter in. And
Hmm.
also, again, I'm speaking about like the 5K, 10K distance.
Yeah.
Those I was still running with like college athletes. So down the
Yeah.
road, definitely interested though.
But what was it like for you being a runner in college? Now you're 3 years out. Uh, did you compete a lot in between college and now, or have you just been keeping it going with training?
Yeah, I have all my races written down on like my phone, but my first year out, I was injured almost the whole year, so I only ran 1 race, but it was a PB. It was a 5K PB, which was kind of
Nice.
the impetus for wanting to keep going because I had been injured this whole time, running was very limited, and yet I was still able to, shave 10 seconds off. It was a big surprise.
Yeah.
Last year, I ran a lot of races. Uh, the longest I did was 10K, and I set PRs at, all the distances and everything. Um and then this year I raced more than I ever had so far. I mean, we're only in June, but, I put a lot of races on the calendar, and I told myself, like, I don't have to be in the best shape of my life, right? Like,
Hmm.
sometimes it was a little bit more of, like, a social thing. Um, so, yeah, I definitely raced quite a bit and, varied the distances just depending on what time of year it was and stuff. But I think the best with all of the races I've done, the lesson that I learned was, not every race has to be a PR. I kind of graduated from that mindset like a year ago, and it makes it a lot more fun. Definitely.
Yeah. What made you realize that?
I just some bad races where I realized like, the weather was terrible and we went out way too slow, and I couldn't give myself like the grace of knowing that. I was just all I could feel was frustration for not setting a personal best because
Hmm.
I've done more training than I did last year, and I've done better workouts. So in my head, I was like, no matter what, I'll run faster. But you can't control, external conditions, and if it's 80 degrees out and like humid, it doesn't have to be a PR for it to be a good race. And I just
Mm.
couldn't. It sounds so easy when I say it now. The listeners are probably, like, rolling their eyes, but, like, when you're in the zone and you're training, it's hard to convince yourself of these things.
Yeah. Okay, so you've obviously learned some lessons along the way. I want to go back to your younger years as a runner and just hear a little bit more about your ambitions back then as a
Yeah.
runner. When you first started running and you realized that you were fairly good at this, what were your ambitions like?
Yeah. Ooh, haven't thought about this in a while. So, early on in high school when I was first starting, I played multiple sports, like I said. So, I only ran cross country, and I only got good at it junior year. So, what I was doing was I was comparing my 5K times on a given course from one year to the next, right? And I was okay, the first meet of the year, I was 10 seconds faster. Second meet of the year, I was 30 seconds faster. So that was the the way I evaluated myself was just versus my older self. Training, I never in high school, I didn't really analyze training. We had a coach. I was new to the sport. It just wasn't really on my radar. Um, I was a little bit of I've always like I've always thought really highly for myself, not like of myself, but like I've always thought I could do very hard things,
Hmm.
even if there was nothing to back it up. So a great example of that is like my junior year. It was my first time running track, so I'd never ran track, and I just said, "I think I wanna break 10 minutes for 2 miles." That was just the goal. It was arbitrary, it was a whole number, and I had enough, sample size of, like, other guys at my high school that have done it, and I think at the time there's one of the senior captains told me, like, I would lower your expectations, like, I you didn't run I did ski team in the winter, I didn't run at all, so he didn't think I could do it, um and, this is the senior captain. He was running at a really good D1 school, meaning he's the person to listen to. He knows. But I just didn't really register that in my head, and I ended up running 950, kind of just because I thought I could. The training was okay. I don't really remember what we did for training. Then fast forwarding to college, similar situation. I just was like, I think I'm going to be good. So freshman year, we ran a 5K time trial, and I was pretty iron deficient, pretty burned out. This is cross country season, um, and just training was going very poorly. And I remember saying again to one of the upperclassmen on the team, uh, you know, he lives like a 4:10 miler, like one of the best miler on the team. I remember telling him that I thought I could run, under 15 minutes or like low 15 minutes. I was like, I don't see why I can't. And I got the same response. He was like, all right, you might want to reel that back in. And at that time, I was like,
Hmm.
"Okay, maybe I should. That's a little crazy." But, fast forward 2 months in February, I ran 15:07 right before COVID
Love
shut
that.
down the season. I ended up, almost breaking 15. So, I guess I have these maybe I honestly don't think about those moments much, but I'm sure in subconscious way, they inform how I think about myself. And now I'll fast forward to now. I've always kind of thought that the OTQ was just a matter of time. It was just like I had to put more training in and get the right race, obviously, but I always knew I could eventually. And in the days, weeks leading up to Vermont, that the marathon I ran, there would be some runs where I visualized the moment, right? Like everyone does, I'm sure, crossing the line, celebrating and everything. And now I'm the one telling myself to rein it in. I was telling myself, don't, don't, don't get like really caught up on this accomplishment. Cause, while that would be possible, let's just shoot for a good day. And if you feel good, make it great. Like I
Hmm.
was the one kind of pulling myself back in, and then, obviously the race went great. So I guess I have a decent number of examples where I was being very ambitious. Someone or something told me to just be where my feet are, and then I did the thing I wanted. Not every race. I've ran way more races than I just named out, and not all of them
Yeah.
went great. But you know, I would say that that's kind of a glimpse into my motivation. Is I think I can do really hard things, and whether or not, other people think I can, like, I think I will in time.
Hmm. I love that. I think that's, hearing those stories, at least for me, it's always been something that motivated me. And I remember before my first marathon, I was told that I couldn't do what my goal was, and I was like, oh, I'll show him. And so, what kind of thoughts uh, went through your head, or like, I guess, all the times where someone's told you that, oh, I think you should lower your expectations or ambitions? What has gone through your head?
Um, I I think that, I think when it comes to running, I'm not gonna try to expand this to, other parts of life just because I don't in running, I think I operate on my own internal metric system, right? Like, my unit of measurement is inside my brain, inside my heart. So, um, whether it's, if you go through my training log and you look at the workouts I did leading up to a given race, it might not look like I was capable of it on paper, but I know what those workouts were for. I knew what they cost in terms of, like, how hard they were. I have my own internal, system, and even if, 10 miles at 6-minute pace, I don't even do I'm just saying, like,
Uh,
some workout, like, I think I know what it means for me, and I've always tried to train at a very manageable level. So when someone says it doesn't I don't really get the sense you're ready for that, like, I might feel like I am because I know what I've done.
yeah. So
And it's
you're sitting on more facts than they are, and that kind of just helps you ignore it almost.
Yeah, and it's not like I'm fine with people, saying, "Oh, like, you might wanna go out at a slower pace." Like, it's not like I have, this revenge or this, like, chip on my shoulder, like I said. It's just they might say that and I might not listen. Sometimes that
Hmm.
might bite me, but I have a few instances where, I went with my gut and it worked out. So, um, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also, like, I'm a realistic person too. Like, I'm not just, my head's not in the clouds thinking I can run sub 2 hours in 2 years if I train hard. I'm
Yeah.
pretty grounded in, actual metrics and actual,
Hmm.
abilities.
Well, based on what you were saying, it doesn't seem like those were unrealistic goals to have either, right? Like it's just that they didn't have all the information that you had.
I it also could just be if it's, another distance runner, that's the one, reining me in. I'm not a super talented athlete. Like, I didn't show immediate promise, when I started running in high school. But there's definitely a lot of natural talent. So I don't think that I require as much time working as other people do to achieve a result. Point like
Exactly.
example being I had a stress fracture, and then I was only doing elliptical workouts, and then I ran a pretty good 5-mile race.
Hmm.
And most people would be like, "How is that possible? How did you do that?" Like, my body doesn't maybe require as much work as other people. I'm not sure. That's just a thought.
Yeah.
Everyone's
And
different.
we'll get back to that because I'm curious about that, and I know that you've been using the elliptical maybe more than a lot of people, and you did also mention that you were injured first year after college. Did you like doubt that you were gonna, or at any point during that year, did you doubt that you would ever pursue a career within running?
No. No, I always knew that I was going to. And again, I think I have, like, an example from earlier in life that informs that belief that I'd get back. My sophomore year of college, which was the heat of the pandemic, a lot of like, competition was shut down. I spent about 6 months, 6 to 8 months really not training at all, and that means, like, barely easy running. Um,
Hmm.
and at the time, I really was convinced that I was not gonna PR again. In a way, like, I almost accepted that. "Look, I've taken too much time off. I can't really come back from this, blah, blah, blah." Just
Was
kind
that
of
just time that you chose to take off, kind of, or was it because of COVID?
no, I was doing other things. I was taking classes
Mm.
online while working a full-time job, so my time was already quite spent.
Yeah.
But I think I realized that it's fun to run with people, and I was home and I wasn't running with people, and I'm also if I take 1 day off and then 2 days off, then 3 days off, if I'm out of my routine, I tend to be out of my routine. So, um, no, I think it was more so just I didn't really have any motivation right in front of me. Like there were no races on the calendar, there were no, like, training partners to run with, so I think it just ended up turning into a few months. Um, but yeah, I had accepted my fate as, I'll never beat my personal bests, and then when I started running again, it only took, a couple months to get into the best shape of my life. So, like, it was a little bit of a pity party.
Yeah.
But first year out of college, no, I mean, I did a lot of cross training, or I was only doing 30, 40 minutes a day. It's really not too much. But it was always for the purpose of getting healthy again so I can run.
Hmm.
That's all it was for me. Yeah.
And at what point during like these 3 years did you decide that okay, now I'm gonna try to do the marathon?
I wanted to start the half marathon, and I ran my first half marathon about, in March of this year. Um, because like I mentioned earlier, I th or maybe I hadn't mentioned it. I've always been the type of runner, the longer the distance, I think the better I am. Just
Hmm.
got good lungs on me. Um, I always kinda struggled with VO2 workouts, but tempo workouts were, like, my bread and butter. So, I had been wanting to move up in distance, and again, with the injuries, I don't wanna run a race just to do a race. I wanna be feel like I trained for it. So, I got a little bit delayed, and I wanted to make a marathon debut in the fall of 2025, and I got my stress fracture, so I had to pivot, which ended up working out fine. It wasn't a big deal. It was, 2 it was like 3 or 4 months total, 3 months no running, and then a month of, like, hybrid training, with the elliptical. But the only reason that I was making debuts at half and full marathon distances in 2026 was just because I didn't have a full stretch of, you know, training to run those races. And also, I was really enjoying running on the track last year. I
Yeah.
was setting PRs at the 5K, 3K, 10K, and didn't really wanna change it up. I was enjoying it. So, um, yeah, I've been meaning to, but it's another thing to actually sign up and register and train for
Yeah.
these longer stuff.
And so for the listeners who haven't been following you, will you first before we get to the marathon, how did your first half go?
It was good. I again, I had a hiccup, like, in, like, about a month before the race. So, the weeks where I really wanted to be hitting my first 100-mile weeks of my life and really getting in long workouts, I kind of had to just swallow my pride and go back, and I was doubling basically every day, elliptical in the morning, running in the evening, and my running workouts were going good. I was in good shape. So it's not like it held me back, in terms of how I was able to perform. I finished in 65:43 on a pretty hilly course, right? This is
Hmm.
not Houston, or Valencia. It's a pretty hilly course. I thought it was, right smack in the middle of what I was capable of. And I enjoyed it. I mean, I ran the whole after mile 4 pretty much to the finish. I was alone, which I have no issue with. It's maybe not as ideal as running in a big pack, but I was okay with it. If anything, it showed me that, okay, this is a really good distance for me because I was still able to run 5 flat miles the whole way and, felt pretty good doing it. So, yeah, I was very happy with that, and it definitely I had this Vermont marathon on my calendar, and after the half, I had about 2 months, and I decided, "Okay, actually, maybe let me put a little bit of marathon prep in before that race because I think it could be good."
Yeah.
So definitely positive.
But when you're like when I asked you now and you answered, you say 65 as if that is just like, 65. And I think to most listeners, like first half marathon in
Yeah.
65, obviously the 2:15 is impressive, but a 65 marathon is also or 65 half marathon is also not something that is, at least to me, it's not like that. I wouldn't say that's less impressive. It's very impressive as well. Did Were you surprised at all by that result, or was that something you expected?
Um, maybe I'm just numb and I, like, don't really get as excited for races these days. I like I said, I was right in the range of where I thought I could run.
Yeah.
So, to me, don't get me wrong, I was very happy with it. I mean, more so, I think that when I both immediately afterwards and then in, like, the week afterwards, I was very proud of the execution.
Mm.
So I'm trying more and more, I'm trying to detach from times as my metric for success, just because you can run into a lot of issues, and like I mentioned, there are things outside your control that affect the time you run.
Yeah.
So I was really happy with the fact that I had the confidence to pull away from the group I was with and just run the pace I thought I could run, and then I was also very happy just, there were points in the course where it got very hard, and I just trusted, I think this headwind, like, I think there's a turn coming up and I'll get a tailwind afterwards, so just stay calm, and it happened. And then, yeah, I mean, it was paced very well, and I was just very happy with the execution of the race for sure.
And I guess there's one thing that I'm forgetting that the listeners don't really know your PRs in the faster distance or shorter distances, right? Because that's obviously playing a role in this. Why don't you just quickly go through some of your PRs in the shorter distances just for reference, so people kind of can understand how you can do your
Yeah.
first half marathon in 65.
No, definitely. My 10K, I ran 30:12, um, on the track last year, so this was 2025, and then I ran 14:20 in the 5K.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna do the whole thing where I think I could run faster. At the time, I thought I was capable of more, but those were solid races for sure. I got f I and then also, like, they were I competed well in those races. I think the 5K, I was 1st place, which means nothing to the listener. They don't even know what race it was. And then the 10K was like another race where it was like well executed. I went out slow and just picked people off the whole way. So those were solid days. And then, if you're listening and you're like trying to relate this to college, like, I ran 14:45 and 30:45 in college. So both of them were about 30-second improvements from when I was on a team and with a coach and stuff.
Yeah. And I guess that although I'm saying that it's, in my opinion, just as impressive as the 215, I would say that before you've done a marathon, the half marathon and the marathon, they're two so different or such
Yes.
different distances, right? So you might, because you're definitely benefiting from the speed that you have from the 5K or the 10K in the half marathon. It's a little bit longer. Or much longer depending on how you look at it, but it's still like it's not the marathon. And so then when you decide to start training for the marathon, did you, like, were you scared of the distance? Did it intimidate you at all, or did you feel like you were ready for that?
I felt like I was ready, but I didn't feel like I knew anything as well. So I did 2 20-mile runs, the longest I've done. So I felt confident I could do 20 at a good clip because those were both like 2 20-mile runs with plenty of quality built into them. Um, but that last 10K it's just a real unknown. I would be remiss to not say, running in a pair of Puma Fast R3s, gives you a lot of it gives me a lot of confidence versus, 10 years ago what I would have been wearing.
Yeah.
You kind of know that you've got some support underneath your feet for sure. And the most confidence I got was actually from a kind of I ran a 10-mile road race in Washington D.C. I didn't bring super shoes with me on the plane or anything like that. I was just visiting my girlfriend's family. So I did 10 miles at what I thought my marathon effort would be. And it wasn't very hard. It felt quite easy. But the takeaway from that was a little bit of what you were getting at. Like, I knew I could hold that pace for another 10 miles. Maybe not another 16. I didn't know if I could do that to the finish, but like it felt very comfortable. I know I can come through halfway feeling really good, especially if I'm in super shoes. So I genuinely like the week of the race when you're doing the questioning and you're starting to lose some confidence maybe and you're questioning your abilities. I thought back on that day and I was like, okay, I can do like 15 to 20 miles. Chill. I'll be fine. I actually was more because I was I'm sure we'll get into training. I was fairly lower mileage than most people would expect. Um,
Yeah.
so my concern was that the pace was not an issue. I'm pretty good aerobically. I can handle a good pace, but regardless of the pace, the distance might get me and my legs
Mhm.
might fall apart, and that was the only unknown. Um, I fueled nicely during the race. I think that fueling helps with that, so, I was able to avoid any sort of cramping, bonking, etcetera. Um, but I didn't really I was kind of entering into the unknown,
Yeah,
as anyone does their first marathon. It's like, whether you're trying to run 2:15 or 3:15 or 4:15, like, you're entering the unknown. You're accepting the fact that you don't know what's gonna happen. Um,
exactly.
so, in that sense, there's nothing unique about it.
No. Yeah, okay, we're gonna get to the training. I have two more questions before we dive into the specifics of that. One is just a marathon that you ran, because like I obviously have to say that Massachusetts is my favorite state. My wife is from there, but I've been to Vermont and it's just such a beautiful state. And
It's
honestly,
beautiful.
like us talking about this, I'm like, I definitely should do a marathon up there at some point because I can't really imagine a nicer spot to run. Will you say something about that race? Because, like you said, when you watch that video clip, it almost looks like you've been doing a marathon in the woods because that's what the finish line looks
There
like.
was one section, so it's the course is 2, like, figure eights. So you do a half marathon and then you retrace your steps. And there is actually, at miles, like, 10 and 24 roughly, there actually is a section where, you go into the woods. You're running on, like, a dirt trail for, like, 200, 300 meters. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, "If I miss the OTQ because of this, like, random trail part, like, I'm gonna be so pissed." Um it was beautiful, and I do wanna take some time to talk about the race because, uh, the meet directors were incredible. They put on a great show. The day itself was rainy and cold. It was 45, 50 degrees and pouring rain, and there were people flooding flooding is a funny word to use, but, there were people all over the place on their porches playing music, cheering on. It was a really fun time. And then from more of, like, a administration standpoint, they, paid for me to come out for the race and got me hooked up with, like a little panel the day before. So I was it was only to like 10 people, but, speaking,
Still,
asking
panel is a
questions,
panel.
and they were just so supportive, and they had bottle stations for us, and they had a technical meeting. I don't know. I don't know if I'm sure a lot of marathons have that kind of support, but for Vermont City, it just felt like they wanted us to do well so bad. Like, they were giving us every opportunity to have a good day and trying to help us out, make it as seamless as possible. So, it was a great race, and that doesn't even bring into account the fact that it's right on Lake Champlain and there's mountains and views, and it's just awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely have to sign up for that one at some point. It must be so nice.
Hilly. I mean, it didn't feel hilly, but it's not the fastest race. So, um,
I guess that
that's
goes
kind of
back
fun
to what
though.
you were saying. Not every race has to be a PR, right? Like it can be an
Right.
experience as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Okay, last question before we dive into the specifics of your training is because obviously you said 3 years out of college, you're not a professional athlete yet. So, what does your life look like when you're not running? Because I assume that
Mm.
you have to work around other things in your life than just running.
Yeah, no, I'm lucky to have other things I enjoy. Um, so yeah, I live currently with my girlfriend and we have a dog. So that takes up the majority of my time, is just whether it's like for fun or if he's being annoying or something, but he's usually fun. I'm like a, general sports fan, right? I mean, um there's always a sport being played, whether it's the World Cup or the basketball, football, whatever it is. I'm all for it. I love watching it. And moreover than that, like, it's an easy way to meet up with friends, right? Is there's a game on, you wanna go watch it. I am also very interested in sports, like analytics and statistics. So, while my consistency with these has been a little bit shaky recently, I have, a blog, like a Substack, where I dive into sports statistics and
Cool.
try to storytell with it because, um, obviously the game itself, whatever game it is, on TV is interesting, but if you can kinda dive into the numbers and find some other storylines, I find that very interesting. So, that was while I was injured, I wanted to find something to do, so I got into that. I love cooking, I love movies, and, I'm trying to, like, hike. this summer. Um, Hiking is uh, sometimes it can be feel like it's a force to get out into the mountains, but
Hmm.
I do like being outside. So I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to sports and being outside. Like
But
those are some pretty universally loved things.
how do you find time for all of this? Because I assume you also have to work some at some point during the day.
I don't do all of these things in the same day, right? Like one day might be dedicated to hiking and the dog, and
Yeah.
then the next day I'll go catch a sports game with some friends or something. I
Hmm.
don't know. I mean, you'll I find time for it all. I don't I
Yeah.
don't I don't feel like it's too difficult to try to fit all of these things in. I mean, it's what I like to do, therefore it's what I do.
Yeah.
Um, Outside of work, that's what you'll catch me doing.
Because what does a normal workday look like for you?
Just a standard. I'm in the office, 8:45, 9 o'clock, and I'm leaving, 4:45, 5 o'clock. Uh,
Mm.
Usually I run beforehand and after, but I wake up early enough to get a run in and everything. And I was actually in a rush this morning. I didn't want to say it. So listeners, Christian and I had some scheduling challenges. Just
That's on
you know,
me though, because
no,
I was on my honeymoon, so I was just
exactly.
like, oh yeah, maybe that day, maybe that day, maybe that day.
But we were recording this at 9 AM, and all I was doing was I was meeting up for a run with, like, a new guy I'm gonna, like, do some training with, and I totally miscounted the mileage I was running, so I ended up running a few miles extra, and then there was some traffic getting and all of a sudden 9 o'clock was seeming like a challenge, but, I'm just that's kinda like what a normal day looks like, yeah.
Ah, okay. And for the listeners, you also actually, when I got on the call at 9 a.m., you were on there already, so you were not
I
late at
was.
all. Yeah,
I, like,
yeah.
sprinted upstairs to my office and, like, got set up and everything, but then I was like, "Okay, I have a few minutes to spare, I'm okay."
Yeah, nice. So one thing that you mentioned uh, earlier was also, and that's something that I can relate to, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners can relate to as well, was that if you are injured or if you're sick and you get like 2, 3, 4 days off, it's really hard to get back into that rhythm.
Yep.
And last fall, after you had your stress fracture, you started training again. Um, and I think that, I'm kind of there right now. I came home from my honeymoon. I was like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy my honeymoon. I'm not going to focus so much on running. I'm going to, have a few glasses of wine, probably too many of those, and not run so much. And then it's really hard to get back into the rhythm of like, okay, now I need to get back into training. What is your, um, like, if you look back at the fall when you were had that stress fracture and had to get back into the rhythm or the routines, what did you do to get back?
From a more technical training standpoint, I was on the elliptical a pretty good amount. I mean, 10 hours a week, maybe.
Hmm.
I mean, that's more than an hour a day, right? There were some
Yeah.
2-hour days on there. But what I've as somebody that has had to cross train a bit the last few years, uh, the rule above all else is, like, you're not going to be consistent if you're being overly intense about it.
Oh,
So, if you're trying to do 2 hours every day, like, that's obviously you're gonna be pretty fit if you're doing the elliptical 2 hours a day, but no one can maintain that for a few weeks in a row. So, I was just doing it at my level, at my pace. If I wanted to do, like, a harder kinda workout, because um, I just felt like, putting on headphones and really, like, cranking, I would do that. And then
yeah.
some days I would just they have, like, little TV screens, and I'd just watch TV and do it casually. So I guess my point is I was able to return to running and I just kept the elliptical as part of it. Like, I was doing the same amount of elliptical, and then I would just go for, like, I was only walk jogging for the most part, and then slowly I'd progress to 4 miles continuous, 6 miles continuous. And then I ran this turkey trot, and I ran quite fast. Uh, like, my last mile was 4:39. That was a big surprise
Wow.
for me. So I realized I was like, "Okay, I definitely did a pretty good job this fall while I was injured of staying fit." So at that point, I started, you know, just slowly if it's like a seesaw of like elliptical and running, I just slowly tip the seesaw back towards running. But the elliptical part never went to zero. I just kept it in the program for a few weeks longer than maybe I needed to, but I thought it was important. Um, The workout paces I was very conservative with, uh, was not trying to rush into anything. Really wanted to reintroduce my body just to running at a harder effort informally before I started trying to hit the track and hit paces. So I was very smart about it. I think it worked out.
Hmm.
The only hiccup I had, which is funny that you kind of, I thought you were introducing this. So I got the flu. I took like, basically, I had a whole week just lost to the flu. And when I came back, I was finally feeling 100% healthy. And initially, you know, physically, my energy was back and I felt okay. So I kind of returned to that 80-mile week. And what ended up happening was I don't think my body was fully recovered or fully ready to dive back in. And immediately I kind of had a little flare up where my stress fracture was in my tibia.
Mm.
And I mitigated that and I went back to the elliptical and it never ended up really being an issue. But it's interesting, like I was able to get back fully running and I was feeling good, being consistent. But if you even something like getting sick, like, you know, don't forget to ramp back up slowly because
Yeah,
even that, like, it was only a couple days off, right? It would be easy to
exactly.
just, like, shake that off and be fine, but, even an interruption like that, like, I would have been better off easing in. So it's just a little interesting.
Yeah, that is super interesting. I think that to a lot of us, we're like, oh yeah, I only had a week off, and the week prior to that, I had 100 miles, whatever. I can easily go jump right back into 90, 95 miles, or maybe even 100 miles, because that's where I uh, where I got sick, and just being able to adjust to that. And I hear that from other people too, and I definitely have something to learn from that.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if you have the flu, like, logically, if you were running consistent mileage for, like, 3 months before and you take a week off, I would still ease in because, your muscles and everything are used to this, strain day to day, and then you stop and they, like, relax and they settle. And then
Yeah,
if you're like me and you have the flu, like, I wasn't eating very much. So all of a sudden, like,
exactly.
my muscles are settling, they're weakening, and then you go right back to that same day-to-day demand. It's a recipe for failure, so,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
But what is your advice to people who are experiencing a stress fracture and building up? You touched on like what you did, but if you were to just give more of a general advice to people who are not necessarily able to do as much on the elliptical as you were and stuff, like what would be your recipe to getting back to running?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm cautious with, like, giving advice just because everyone's different, their situation is different. I was able to elliptical when I was injured. Everyone
Yeah,
might be different, but generally speaking, a general belief that I hold is, like, look, you'll again, I have lived experience for it, so that informs why I feel this way, but, like, you'll always be able to come back into shape. It might take a while, but, I would never try to, overdo it. Ideally, you wanna catch it early, right? So if you're feeling something, if your body's not feeling right, you gotta figure out like, you don't necessarily need to, like, go to the doctor every time you have a little pain, but I would pull the reins back a bit if you're feeling tightness or pain.
yeah.
Like, for me, I thought it was shin splints,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and I just
That's
was
that's what
like,
I'm
I
always
didn't
afraid of. That it's just like you think it is, and then it's something more, and then you're screwed.
and I didn't respect the shin splint, fear at all.
Yeah.
So I just pushed through it, and not only did I not only did I push through it, but I didn't even really do anything in the gym or seek out help to make it better. So I was just
Mm.
being really stupid. So don't be stupid, guys. Listen to your body and like I feel like it's disingenuous just to say like, listen to your body and pull back if you have to. Like genuinely, like you're not going to lose fitness if you cross train instead of running for a couple of days. If you do that and it feels better, like you'll be good. What you're trying to avoid is injury and re-injury. Where you're
Yeah.
trying it days off are fine, weeks off are not, right? Like days off are good, months off are not.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I would y- the next race you have is never as important as it seems. You can always sign up for another one later on, and if you sign up
Exactly.
for a race next year, you can do more training before it, and you'll probably do better. So
Yeah.
yeah, take it slow. That's my
Yeah.
advice.
Perfect. And then throughout this, like if we jump to that turkey trot that you did, where you were running fairly well, and like after all of this, throughout the winter, you slowly built yourself up. You sent me this document that you have, like an Excel sheet of all your training, what it looked like, and like you said, there's a lot of elliptical training there. Uh, will you just quickly take us through like overall what your training looked like for those months, and then I'm sure like in terms of the more specific things you did for the marathon, we can get to that too. But just to build it up, what did you do?
Okay, so January to March, or actually January to like mid-April, you could assume that a given week was about 75 miles. Probably had 1 or 2 elliptical sessions built into it. Um, the elliptical sessions just being, you know, a double to save my legs. Like, I wanted to do an extra hour, but I didn't wanna run for an extra hour, so that was the purpose. In terms of running, I'd probably do a double threshold day, and I'm not scientific with that. I understand, like, there's a lot of reason why that's not recommended if you don't have, a coach and a lactate meter and stuff, but the morning sessions were typically quite slow for me. Um, like, if you went online and onto, like, a calculator and you're like, "What's my threshold pace?" Like, it would probably say that for me, it was, 5:05, 5:10. Those morning sessions were like 5:30 to 5:45. So they were quite slow. They honestly didn't feel that slow though. Like in the morning, sometimes it can take your body some time to wake up. So for me, I felt like I was getting the effort I wanted. And if I'm gonna miss, I want to miss on the slow side, right? I don't want to overdo it. And then in the afternoon, I'll come back and be closer to that 5:05, 5:10 range. Another day in the week will either be like a longer continuous threshold workout or a track workout, depending on what race I had on the horizon. And then I would maybe do a hill workout or another like threshold workout later in the week, depending on depending on how I broke it up. So 2 or 3 workouts, not really any long runs. Because I was coming back from a stress fracture, I just didn't really view it. I would rather do the hill workout instead
Hmm.
and then do a double so I get roughly the same mileage. And overall for the week, I was probably hitting 75 to 80 miles
Yeah.
plus 2 hours on the elliptical. So that was a standard week for most of the year. And I was training for a 5K here or there. I was
So
in
two
pretty good
two 2 hours on elliptical total in during the week,
during the
or
week. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And, that was the training that got me 65:43 and a half. I did 1 or 2 half marathon specific workouts.
what did
And
they look like?
I did 3 mile, 2 mile, 1 mile as one of the workouts, and then I did 4 times 2 miles as another workout. And both of those, I didn't have like a prescribed pace that I was trying to hit, but I was really gravitating right around 5 flat per mile, which is what I ended up averaging on race day. So
Mhm.
think of those as, half marathon pace specific. Um, and yeah, so
And can
that
I also ask, how do you control the intensity for you? Do you go by feel, or do you use heart rate a lot? Do you measure your lactate?
Um, yeah, it's effort. It's pretty informal, but it's informal on the basis of years of sample size, right? Like I've done a
Yeah.
lot of workouts. I'm trying to hit a certain effort and um I try not to I don't need every split to be faster than the previous, right? If I need to pull back,
Mhm.
I'll pull back.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of luck, right? Like I'm lucky that, I wasn't overcooking those because my race probably wouldn't have been as good. Um So that was like 2.5 months of the winter and spring, and I ran a half marathon. I tried to run a 5K, but I was not recovered from my illness, so it just didn't go very well. And then I ran a road 5K. Um, Not super flashy, but I ran a couple of races off that. Basically, think of those months as like solid 5K, 10K training.
Yeah.
Um, then after I did a road 5K. It was that BAA, like, professional one, which, like I said, it wasn't the greatest race. But after that, it was time to try to do some bigger miles. So I had 5 weeks until the marathon, the 5th of which being race week. So I did 3 weeks at, like, 95 on 6 days, 107 on 7, and then 95 on 6 days, and then 2 weeks tapering it down slowly. I did 2, kind of 3 long runs. I did 2 I would do 2 double sessions, 2 double threshold sessions in a week, and then a long run. So that's where the mileage really ramped up. And then
Yeah.
another way I changed it was the day before workout day, I would do 12 miles in the morning and then 4 miles in the evening because I wanted to get some practice running longer continuous,
Hmm.
but it was like at a slow pace. So yeah, a couple of big weeks. Those double threshold sessions ended up being, oftentimes at my eventual marathon pace. So I was getting plenty of time in that zone where my body, like the legs are moving at that rhythm and my heart is beating at that rate. So I was getting plenty of practice in, got some good long runs in, and and then it was really only those 3 weeks, and then I was like, okay, let me taper it down. And I dialed the intensity of the workout up slightly, but I was kind of just doing like, couple K repeats, couple mile repeats, like very standard stuff in the
Yeah.
weeks leading up and then race day. Yeah.
So for those weeks leading up where you ramped up the mileage a bit, did you still keep the elliptical or did you
No, at that
just
point I kind of told myself like, let's just put in a mini marathon block. At that point I was 100% healthy. I was feeling really good and
yeah.
fit. So I basically said like, let's take a calculated risk, right?
Hmm.
Ramping the mileage up from 80 to, 100 plus is risky.
Yeah.
You're not guaranteed to get hurt, but if you're not smart about, like, getting sleep and eating enough, that's literally a recipe for injury,
You're
so
all almost guaranteed.
so I was like, "I think I can take a calculated risk here. I think I can handle this for
Yeah.
a short stint of time,"
Yeah.
and, in another universe, I got hurt and didn't race, but in this universe, it
Exactly.
worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess this is where all your experience as a runner, as an athlete, kind of just benefits you quite a lot, right? Because you end up having you know your body, and I think that also
Yeah.
back to what you were saying about running on effort instead of heart rate or lactate. You know what it's supposed to feel like compared to someone who just starts running. It's a big difference.
And the piece about, like, if you're gonna miss on the slower side, I
Yeah,
think is
I
also
love
important
that.
because
Yeah.
I one road I went down that ended up be like, I made some mistakes because, the way I describe it, this is very informal, but there's, like, internal and external effort. Internal effort is you can't see it, you can't feel it. That's like your blood moving. Those are like your muscles, working. Like, I don't feel that. The external effort is how hard I'm breathing, how sore my legs are, and
Mhm.
a problem I've ran into is, and maybe this is unique to me, my external effort always feels easier than the internal is, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when I'm doing, threshold workouts and I'm not breathing that hard and it feels pretty easy, I'm probably overdoing it internally, like in the
Hmm.
past. So I've really each year where I've gotten faster and faster, those workouts have actually gotten slower and slower. I might be doing more of them now. Like I might be doing 8 times a mile instead of 5 times a mile, but it's at a slower pace. Um, so it is kind of interesting. Like you would never. I don't know how many of your guests would say the same thing. Like as I've gotten better, I've started working out slower. But for me,
Actually,
that's been a key component.
Alfie Manthorpe, I don't know if you're familiar
I
with
know
the
Alfie.
name,
Yeah,
but he said the exact same thing. He
yeah.
said that as I gotten faster, my workouts are slower. Running slower now than I did at whatever age he referred to. So
And
that is
and
a cool
he's
thing.
got some really good credibility too because he's had a pretty prominent, like, social media, like, running account for years
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
and I remember during COVID, he was making all sorts of really intense training videos. And then a few years went by, and I'm on social media a lot less than I used to, and a video of his popped up, and he's running 61 minutes in the half, and he ran
Hmm.
27:38 in the 10K. I mean,
Yeah.
these are absolutely elite times, and I can't believe that it was the same, teenager I used to watch. So
Exactly.
he definitely knows a thing or two, and he's a good reference. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, will you just quickly? I mean, you took us through some of the runs you did and stuff. But like, if we were to look at one, because like you call it a mini marathon block yourself, because
right.
you didn't have that. What a lot of people would say, like, okay, we're having 16, 12 weeks, whatever, of marathon training, building it up, and it's going to be more and more marathon specific. What was your what did your week look like, and like those weeks where you ramped up the mileage? If you take us through Monday to Sunday, what would a normal week look like?
Yeah, it
And if
was
you could just also be specific on, the workouts that you did, what did the workouts look like?
yes. Um, I would just do, Monday was, 12 and 4, 12 miles, 4 miles.
Mhm.
Tuesday was double threshold. So that was usually 6 miles of work in the morning, however I split it up. It really doesn't matter how you split it up. You could do 6 times a mile, 5 by 6 minute. You could do 6 miles continuous. I didn't care. I was usually trying to meet up with somebody, so I just do what they were doing. And again, morning session slower. Afternoon, I do K repeats, about 11 of them, a little faster.
Yeah.
Uh, I would sleep in Wednesday because I need some good sleep. I'd run like 'I'd run like an hour. Honestly, I was not even tracking mileage at this point. I was trying to disconnect from like numbers and stuff. I was trying to just like
Yeah.
not obsess over it. So I would run for like 8 miles probably Wednesday. Um, do another 12 and 4 Thursday. Do um another double day, same exact criteria. On Friday, I would do the same thing I did Tuesday. Saturday, same thing, 8 miles, easy. And then Sunday, I did a long run, 20 miles. Um, I would I would crowdsource those workouts, meaning I would just text some friends that I trust, and I was just like, "What do you think I should do tomorrow?"
Mhm.
Because I was like, "It's 20 miles. I'm trying to get in a good amount of work. Like, I'll do it however I want." So I did 1 week. I did 3 times 5 mile. The next week, I did like 6 miles marathon pace, then like 6 times a mile at half marathon pace. That was a good
Yeah.
workout. That was hard.
Mhm.
Um, Usually I do like a longer warm up, like progressive. So I kind of got the legs spinning a bit before I started. And yeah, I mean that was kind of it. I don't and then the third week I did like a 10 mile like progression run and then I paced a 10K. So I did
Yeah.
like 5 miles, like, 5 flat pace, which is like the easiest way to get in like hard work is just pace a race because, like you have the race atmosphere and everything and you'll be on the track.
Yeah.
Those were the 3 weeks and like, look, they weren't like robotic. I mean, after my first 20-mile run, I went and I hiked the biggest mountain in, like, New England the next day. I know that's stupid. I know you guys are listening or think I'm crazy, but, like, it was a day off from running, and it was, like, low intensity, long volume, like, it was, like, a 6-hour day of hiking, um,
Was it the same day or the day after?
the day after day
Yeah,
after.
yeah, okay.
So it
Yeah,
was
I
like a re
thought you
I
meant
I
just after, but that makes it a bit better. Then it's a great recovery day, I
as long as
guess,
you're
in
not,
some
like,
ways.
stressing out about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I was trying to disconnect from the numbers, like, an older version of myself would freak out that I didn't get in, the sauna and, like, the mile as I wanted. No, just it was fine.
Yeah.
It was slow moving, and, I mean, it worked out, so it's never that serious.
But after this, like I love the simplicity of this. You're putting in the work, but it's not too complicated. And by the sounds of it, I haven't even asked you because it sounds like you're self-coached. Do you are you planning on making any changes for the next one? Because now you did a 2:15 for this, and it worked pretty well for you.
Yeah, it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but also, like, how can I optimize for the next one? Because there's no guarantee, like, an optimal marathon strategy works for me because everyone's different. Yeah, so I was self-coached, I wouldn't even call it coaching, I was basically just doing the same thing every week, um, tweaking, like, whatever specific workout I wanted every few weeks, if I was doing a 5K versus a marathon, right? But this is my first week under a new coach, um, I can't really speak on the relationship yet just because I haven't even really gotten started, but I went for a run this morning with, a new, like, training partner, this guy, Aaron Gruen, 209 marathoner.
Hmm.
I've got a long way to go before I'm there, but he's a coach. He coached at Brown University. He's got a pretty good team. He's got a couple Olympians that he works with, so I feel very lucky to be I got introduced to him, and it basically, like, we talked on the phone, like, for 2 hours, and, like, we see pretty eye to eye on a lot of things that
Cool.
I find important. So, just into like, intensity and, flexibility with, like, with workouts. So, I'm excited for it. I have no idea what it'll look like from a training standpoint. Um, but we have our races, and we'll progress through them and stuff, and I'm very excited. I mean, I'm somebody that look, I'm sure, you know, the best runners in the world know a lot about running and they could coach themselves, but they don't. They all have coaches,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm sure we can all learn from that. If you're trying to be really serious like me, like I'm trying to be really serious, like I view a natural progression as get a coach. I don't
Hmm.
wanna stress out about what workouts to do. I don't wanna crowdsource my long run sessions. Like, I wanna just be told, "Here's the workout, go get it done." Um, and, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. But do you think we're getting to the end of our conversation here? But I'm curious. Do you think that in a perfect world, if you didn't have to work and you had all the time to train and focus on running, and you got up to a certain mileage, that you would still add some cross training in there just to get more hours?
Hmm. I I think that you can, like, periodize a bit, right? Um, so right before a big marathon, I would probably wanna be all running. I would wanna be as specific as possible to that race. Um, but yeah, like now would be a very logical time for me to, um, play it a little bit safer as I'm getting back in, get the volume back up so my body is used to 12 hours of exercise a day. But my body is, still recovering from this big effort. Maybe
Yeah.
just the pounding, poses a risk, and I want to avoid it. I've thought about it. I go back and forth. Unfortunately, I change my mind a lot on training, and sometimes I think I should keep it in every single week, and other times I only view it as like a supplement when I'm feeling a little bit injured. Um, and that's exactly where I want to get a coach, is because I'm tired of like changing and flip flopping my ideas and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I think
I
I
can
I think
relate to that.
you could be a great half marathon and down runner if you're on the elliptical, 4 days a week. I think that with the marathon specifically, you probably want to be running the full
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
But there's times of the year where it makes sense, definitely.
Hmm. Yeah. No, cool. And we're only a few weeks away from, or like out from the marathon that you did, and I'm sure that there's like you mentioned that you had a plan of how to get to this OTQ and like run the time that you actually ended up running already. If you were to kind of like share a little bit about your thoughts now going forward, short term and long term, what do you think, or do you have any plans and ambitions and goals going forward?
Yeah. Um, so long term at the trials, like the American Olympic trials, in the marathon, that's a race where there's a ton of, guys who either wanna make the team or just wanna have a good day, right? But a lot of people don't. It's a very hard race to actually nail the execution on. So, the reason that is because a lot of people go out with the leaders and a bunch of people go out super fast and then die. And you probably get, like, a fifth of the field probably, like, DNFs or essentially DNFs. So I wanna have as good a day as possible there, just like everyone else. Everyone on the start line has the same goal, to have a good day. But my training might look a little unique if that's really how I wanna execute, because I might wanna hold back at the beginning and, like, swallow my pride and go out, in the 2nd or 3rd pack and then move up after the halfway point. So, my long-term ambition is genuinely to nail that race.
Yeah.
Um Now, shorter term, it's exciting. I mean, I'm gonna be running the CIM, which is a fast marathon in California. It's the
Hmm.
USATF Marathon Champs. So there's like a subsequent, like a separate field for that I'll be a part of, which is cool.
Yeah.
And what I kind of since it's no longer an OTQ attempt, since I have that, yes, I would like to run faster. However fast my training is indicating I can do. But I'm kind of viewing the next 6 months, or yeah, about 6 months. It's kind of like my first opportunity to do an actual marathon build. So, I have a 10K in August. I have a 10K in September. I'll do a half marathon in October, and then this marathon race. So, it's like an opportunity to just slowly progress, work on some speed first, make the faster paces feel easier, then slowly build in a little bit more miles, some more long runs, take our pulse at that half marathon. I don't know where yet, but check my pulse, check my fitness, just make sure things are clicking and working, and then put in the final push for the last like month and a half, and really try to nail the 26.2 mile distance. Um, so you know, Vermont was my first time racing the marathon, but this is my first time really, like, training for it. And it's like, I've actually never described it that way. I just thought of that. I'm actually very excited now that I said it out loud. It sounds really cool.
It
Yeah.
does. I can't wait to see where you're going, and I think we'll need to have you back either closer to CIM or after. So last question for now is, if we look even, or if you look even further into the future than just the OTQ, because you're still going to be young in the marathon perspective.
Yeah.
What is your big life goal with running?
It was the OTQ for my whole life. Like,
Yeah.
ever since college and stuff, that was the big goal,
I love
which is
that.
why that's what your first. I think your first question to me when we started was like, "What were you thinking when you crossed the line?" Like, that was what I was thinking about, was I was like, "Wait, what? Like, did I just finish running? Am I done?" Um, I don't really have the next one yet. I
Oh,
think
that's
that
cool.
making a world's team or something like that is a little bit just, like, far-fetched, realistically. Like, I'm okay with, like, I don't I maybe down the road, I'll be like, "Wow, I can't believe I didn't think I could," but, like,
The listeners are going to be like, he ran a 2:15 at his first marathon. I don't know if that is far fetched.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't place a ceiling on, like, what time I can run. Like, who knows
No.
what the shoes will be like in 5 years and, how my training goes. So, like, if I could run 2:09, I feel like I would be ready to retire, but, um, I think I just wanna keep for the next 5 to 10 years, I wanna just keep um, you know, training and progressing and try to get faster and faster, and we'll see how fast that is. And then after that, like, running will always be a part of my life. After that, maybe it'll be, trying to run all the world majors and travel the world and run in Tokyo and Berlin and, you know, everywhere. So, yeah, that's kind of how I view it. I think running will always be a part of it somehow, and maybe my competitive drive will fall off in 10 years or so. But for the time being, I'm just trying to get as fast as possible because that's just always kind of been the point, is to get faster. Yeah,
Seems like it's working out pretty well for you. Yeah,
hope so.
can't wait to follow and see where you'll end up. So Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time and for guesting the podcast, and good luck with your first ever marathon block.
Thank you. Yeah, looking forward to actually doing it the right way. Yeah.
Thank you so much to Ryan for coming on. Thank you to you for listening to this episode. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you listening. And I just want to again mention that by using the code Warwick Runs, you can get a little something if you buy yourself something on Insta360's cameras. I was talking about it in the last episode. This little camera has become little favorite for me in terms of content creation on my run, especially because I can just take this off and use it as this little thing. I can even run with it in my hand the whole run, and it doesn't really bother me. But I can also easily put it in my pockets. Also, remember that you can buy the marathon hat by the Marathon Podcast and CLA on the marathonpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. Please give this podcast a review if you haven't already. Share it with a friend. And as always, enjoy your run. Happy running. I'll talk to you in the next one. You listen to the Marathon Podcast, brought to you by Wallet Studio and me.